Steven Lubka is here with us. Special guest. He is the co-founder of Vibes Capital Management. Welcome to the show, Steven.
Pleasure to be on, my man. It's always good to be here. We've had had an exciting week with the launch of the fund, public launch of the fund. We've got a lot of exciting stuff cooking. It's just, I think the world is really at a point where, we've got vibe coding, we've got all of these things kind of that have risen into the zeitgeist and the collective kind of edge, and vibes driven capital management, just a very underdeveloped I think edge for managers. And I just think like the age of the pale, high cortisol, skinny fat Wall Street fund manager, that's behind us. You can't separate elite asset management performance from kind of basic system inputs that you're going to cultivate out in the sun, working on real work.
I love your marketing on Twitter. It's really grassroots. Watch out for the Vibes Capital tank tops coming your way soon on FOMO21.com.
Coming soon.
Good times. Welcome everybody to Swan Signal Live. It's Friday. We're above 100K again, Bitcoiners. Get hyped. Thanks to Mara for supporting the show and securing the Bitcoin network. Shout out to BTC Prague coming up pretty soon, next month, I believe, and BTC in DC coming up this fall at the Kennedy Center in the nation's capital. Going to be epic. More about those at the end of the show. John, I see you have a Villanova shirt on. Villanova is in Chicago. Is that the reason you put that shirt on today?
Villanova is in Philadelphia, Brady, but I think you are connecting the fact that there's a small announcement on the globe. There's a new pope named. He is originally from Chicago, but he graduated from Villanova. And my phone started blowing up yesterday afternoon. I was not following the pope race closely, admittedly. I had no idea that an American pope was in the running. I had no idea that a Villanova grad as pope was in the running. So the first couple of people who sent it to me, it's like Villanova grad becomes pope. I was like, this is a joke, right? Like this is some sort of weird joke. And then it got confirmed and I was like, whoa, and then 50 more people sent it to me. So we're celebrating the Pope here, American Pope, Villanova grad. I think 1977 was the year, a little bit before my time, admittedly. But, my interpretation is that one of the four of us has a realistic chance of becoming Pope one day now.
Absolutely.
Apologies for mistaking Villanova being in Chicago, not Philadelphia. Massive respect for the basketball program.
We need to calculate your new degrees of separation from the Pope. Somebody that knows somebody that knows the Pope. How far are we talking here?
Yeah, what's your LinkedIn connection distance?
How close are you connections?
Awesome. All right, guys, let's get into the Bitcoin talk. That's what everyone's here for. We like to have a little fun on the top of the show, though. John, we always start with the macro stuff. Again, plenty to talk about. We've got Bitcoin up in the past 30 days, over 30%, up $27,000 per coin in the past 30 days. Bear market's back in earnest.
Bull market's back in earnest.
Man, what is wrong with me today? I'm putting Villanova in Chicago and I'm talking about the bear market. Wake up. All right, here we go. Yes, bull market back in earnest.
The bull market is back in earnest. Yeah, so I'll hit on a few. Yes, Bitcoin above 103. Bitcoin didn't spend that much time above 103 earlier this year. It was kind of up quick to 109 and then quick back down. So that's definitely noteworthy. I'll hit on a few macro things that happened this week. I also want to give some feedback from the MicroStrategy conference. I was there in Orlando. I was not there for the whole duration of the conference, but I spoke to a ton of people who were, and I got some vibes from that conference. So I'll relay those. Macro wise, I would say biggest, I'll just kind of list it out and we can dive deeper into it based on what you guys are thinking. But we had a Fed meeting this week. There's actually not a ton to report from that. Wait and see was the tagline that everyone was tweeting. Jerome Powell literally said the phrase wait and see at least 5 times. He literally, when he was giving comments. So, and you can kind of understand the position that they're in. there's tariffs and kind of back and forth trade negotiations happening that have not really happened in most of our lifetime. So the Fed doesn't really know what the impacts of these things are going to be. So they are waiting and seeing to see how tariffs impact things like employment, like inflation. They held rates constant, not too much of a surprise. But if you guys are listeners of this show, we're not really Fed hawks to say like, oh, the Fed cut 25 basis points. That means, some crazy implications for the market. We don't really view it that way. But they're holding tight for now. That was kind of the Fed meeting. Other macro stuff that happened this week. So there was a UK trade announcement. I think details are kind of still to come on that, but you have to look bigger picture here. What caused Bitcoin to sell off? Almost exactly a month ago, we hit the lows. You can mark that because Stephen Luca tweeted, feels like the low here. And vibes were like correct to the hour almost.
Nailed it.
Ridiculous. So yeah, it was like almost exactly a month when Bitcoin kind of hit that low below 80K, like roughly 75K. And everyone kind of knew we needed clarity. It was because of the trade war situation, tariffs, trade war, uncertainty. Everyone kind of knew we would need clarity for Bitcoin to rally back up above 100. I'll admit that there hasn't been that much clarity on the trade war situation, and Bitcoin has already rallied above 100.
Correct.
So I think that's a pretty big signal. It just shows that there's big buyers in the market. Bitcoin kind of is behaving like this coiled spring where there's just a little bit of good news, a little bit of clarity, and Bitcoin is front running that. So I think that's kind of a big deal. There's some other things we should get into about, it seems like the back and forth between the US and China is lightening up. It's far from being any sort of resolution, but there have been positive headlines, which I think is what also has helped Bitcoin and the markets in general. So that's just like a quick macro summary. I'm sure you guys want to add some color to that.
We've been talking about showing charts the last couple of episodes about M2 rising, liquidity coming into the market, and that very reliably predicting a Bitcoin push up in price. And we're seeing that happen. I think maybe it has something to do with the M2 supply increasing, also the factors you talked about. But that chart, those charts, the M2 charts, were definitely predicting a move like this.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's wild. There's a lot of back and forth on kind of the statistical validity or like how to relate those things. I remember tweeting at the time, like, I think this is one of those things where people are going to like, argue about whether it's real or not. And either way, it's going to look like it was. And we absolutely got that. I think to follow on some of John's points, so Trump recently floated an 80% tariff for China, which is down from 145. So obviously that is a big reduction, still an extraordinarily high tariff rate, but moving in the right direction. You're having Secretary Bessent is going to be taking the first meeting with one of their head economic advisors. So things are moving in the right direction there. And they're also, trade deals with the UK. It did end up sticking a 10% universal tariff rate, but honestly, that's something I think the market can handle. So you're seeing just kind of this wide improvement across the board. You did have Trump say you should go buy stocks again. Last time he said it was before the 90-day tariff extension. So again, and this is what I was talking about at the time, that like I was talking about the bottom being in the after the first week of April, is you see the administration switch from talking down the market to talking up the market. And that's kind of the key here, right? Prior to April 9th, all the messaging out of the White House was effectively that they don't care about Wall Street, they care about Main Street. They're willing to take some pain on Wall Street to make things better on Main Street. Post April 9th, post that bottom with that 90-day tariff exemption, bringing Bessent in for Lutnick, the messaging from the White House continues to be, the stock market's going to do fine. You should buy stocks. Trade deals coming. We're going to grow, like blah, blah, blah. They're now talking up the market instead of talking down the market. That was the signpost for people, I think, to like adjust positioning on. Yeah. And if you had cash or you were sidelined or you'd hedged something, that was kind of your signal to like deploy cash and enter the market.
I gotta say, it is nice that Trump shares his insider trading alpha with all of us.
Everybody.
Which is unusual for a politician.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's insider trading if the entire country hears about it at the same time.
Exactly.
That's his out.
Outsider trading.
Yeah, it's outsider trading. So it is somewhat convenient. And yeah, just a huge shift there. And it's a shift that continues to play out. Trade deals, de-escalation, talking up the market. He needs to see that happen. Now, the remarkable point is what John said, and it's that in all of that, Bitcoin has heavily outperformed the S&P. The S&P is somewhere around 5,700, something like that. Haven't looked at it today. Bitcoin's at 103, 104, floating in this zone, inches from an all-time high, under 4% from the all-time high. The S&P would have to go from 5,700 to, the low 6,000s to be back above its all-time high. Bitcoin has outperformed it heavily on the way up. And this is a theme that we've been kind of, hitting on the show, that Bitcoin is a beneficiary of both environments. It is a beneficiary of risk-on asset growth sentiment returning, and it's also a beneficiary of a changing economic order. And so it's really been this beautiful asset to own at this juncture, where it's going to do well regardless of which path we take in most cases.
Yeah, you hit my take there, Stephen. One thing, I'm more excited this time around going over 100K.
Yes.
I don't know if that's shared. Yeah, same. I hope we hang out here longer, and I think there's plenty of signs showing that we will. One being that, no matter what happens, either side of this play, Bitcoin, is going to win. And I did look at the numbers this morning, Stephen. Both NASDAQ and S&P are right around negative 0.5% to 1% on the year, while Bitcoin's up 10% in the year to date. So don't say the word decoupling. That's another battle that was going on, but there's a change. There's a shift happening there.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, the performance has been striking between Bitcoin and the broader asset market.
So can I ask a question? I'm curious, and hopefully you guys can hear me a little bit better with the mic now. But so what do you got? Let's just summarize like super simplistically what we've seen this year since Trump got inaugurated. It was like all-time highs for everything. Then basically the market says, oh no, these guys are trying to reorder the global trading system, tariffs, trade wars. They're making all these comments that Stephen alluded to, Main Street over Wall Street, et cetera, et cetera. Markets drop by, I don't know what the S&P was down, peak to trough, 20% maybe. Bitcoin's down a lot. So that happens, and we've recovered a lot of it. At least Bitcoin has basically, I would call this recovering all of it. Do you guys think that this is like, we're like smooth sailing from here for the next, year or two of this administration? Or do you think that was just like one mini cycle of the administration saying, hey, we're playing hardball. We don't care if asset prices go down. We have to do this to get what we think is better for the country?
It's a hard one. I mean, you're asking the real question, and that's a hard question, right? So there's maybe a few ways to answer that. The first way to answer it is you have the roadmap of the first Trump administration, where he came into office, he started a trade war with China, he put tariffs on China, he did this whole thing. And then that kind of got de-escalated, and he never revisited it. And you had a very strong stock market performance under the first Trump administration. So there was this initial acceleration of tensions, and then you never revisited it. The other way you could look at it is, hey, they've been very vocal about wanting to reorder trade, and that's not done. There's a lot to do there. Could you see another swing at it? Could you see asset markets swing down again? I mean, it's certainly possible, but it's very much going to depend on their actions. And it's going to depend on how much tolerance they have for that sort of pain and sinking approval rating. I mean, you've seen him take a hit with his approval rating because of these economic policies. If I were shooting from the hip here, which I love to do. I
Go
would
off
say
the vibes, Steven.
yeah,
Go the vibes.
they don't want, I don't think they want that pain again. That doesn't mean there'll be zero of anything. That doesn't mean they'll have like no effort whatsoever to kind of keep going down this path. I do think they got a little burned. I think, you know, they had their hand on the stove and the stove got too hot with the amount of economic pain and asset pain we were seeing. And I think they're going to be much more cautious to revisit that again. I don't think he wants to see a recovery in the S&P and then another shoot down to 4,500. That's just not my base case. It's possible, but I really think they got more scared. Scared is maybe the wrong word. It's not expressing, but they got more. The pain was too fast and too sudden compared to what they were trying to do, and I think they do pull back from that.
It's like we were talking about last week. It's, you know, last few weeks really. Besant is now in control, and completely different styles between Lutnick and Besant, and that we're seeing the more measured, you know, less sort of volatile or like aggressive sort of style of Lutnick now, and seeing something more measured. And I think the markets have reacted to that. Okay, we've got an adult in the room, a guy we really trust, and who's really good at this. And now he's, you know, kind of taking the reins, which is positive for the markets.
Very, very good.
Yeah.
What do you think, Alec?
Yeah, I'm still anticipating volatility. You know, it's nice to see that it's calmed down, but you know, one tweet can change everything, it seems. So, you know, like Steven said, it's tough call. Expect more sideways chop. Expect sharp shoots upward, sharp shoots downward based on a tweet. Definitely can see those things happening, but it's nice to see, you know, Besant stepping in, kind of taking care of these things. But I think Trump can get bored and he can start sending out some tweets that'll cause volatility.
I think that's well said. Yeah, I think more volatility for this year compared to years past in recent memory for sure. And then I know I asked you guys the question kind of more generally, but if I was going to differentiate between traditional markets, just call it US equities and Bitcoin, yes, they kind of move in similar directions at times, but I would highlight, if there is going to be more volatility from, you know, either Trump tweets, trade wars, or concerns that we're entering some sort of recession, just because the economy is slowing, or because of this uncertainty from the trade wars, I would still be more concerned holding U.S. stocks. Correct. And I've made this point before, but I'll make it again, because U.S. stocks just have this like price to perfection valuations. It's kind of like the smallest thing could set them off, and they could fall by 10%, and really it's not that crazy. Bitcoin, on the other hand, yes, it could fall by 10%, but there's just so many wild cards out there where Bitcoin could, the large buy. We haven't even talked about the MicroStrategy conference, but there were 2 more announcements of these LBE, leveraged Bitcoin equities, companies that are going to basically become Bitcoin acquisition vehicles, run the MicroStrategy playbook. I think that's a huge factor. Like, nation state adoption is actually in the cards for 2025. Yep. So we could see that world where, yes, trade wars are still going on. There's recession concerns, and that's weighing on US equities to some extent. But then you have these massive announcements of Bitcoin companies and nation states buying, and that could just outweigh what's happening in, the S&P. So, you're probably not surprised to hear me say this, but would feel a lot more comfortable owning Bitcoin than stocks right now.
And I think that's right. I think U.S. equities, and I think that's part of the changing market condition, is investors are realizing that Bitcoin actually doesn't have a lot of the risks that are weighing on U.S. assets, stocks right now, tariffs, trade, earnings, valuation. Bitcoin doesn't really have any of that. And actually, it has idiosyncratic tailwinds from rising corporate adoption, rising international ownership, rising sovereign engagement. These trends all look extremely constructive, very positive, and it's sheltered from the worst of the negative impacts. So yeah, I think if you do see kind of a second push down in the S&P, it's going to be due to recession concerns, I think. It's not going to be tariff driven. It's going to be, like a push to a low. It's going to be driven by like economic data deteriorating. But even then, the administration has an option to do stimulus, to do policy that can be supportive of counteracting that recession. And again, I think they would at this point, because I think, and I've heard this from people relatively close, the thing they truly fear is a recession. And I think they would be much more proactive at trying to halt that. Because if you think about it right now, he's basically saying there's going to be some short-term pain on Wall Street, but the economy will be better off for it. Main Street will be better off for it. There will be jobs, there will be growth, there will be all of these things. And so if we take the pain on the Wall Street side and we take, which isn't just Wall Street, it's people's savings, it's their 401k, it's their retirement fund. It's not just Wall Street. But if we take the pain there, and then he has to deal with, and it caused a recession, I think that's a political no-go zone. And I think they'd go quite hard to avoid that. And I think they do have tools in the toolkit. So I think that would be the thing that would cause it, but I also think they'd work very hard to avoid that.
One more thing that Stephen made this point, but I just want to underscore it. It is interesting to look at the order of operations of Trump 1.0 versus 2.0. The first big thing they accomplished in 1.0 was the Tax Cuts and Job Act the first time, and then they went to tariffs after that. I think this time they've said, you know what, they view it as, let's take the bad medicine, right, of the tariffs. It's kind of like combating all these years of what they would say bad trade policy. They're like, let's do that first. And I think you're going to see the tax cuts and other stimulus measures come later in the administration. So that's just a different approach they had in Trump 1.0 versus now in 2.0.
Totally makes sense. Let's take a look at a couple of charts before we move on to other news. This is one of my favorites, and we've looked at the MVRV before. This is basically a short-term hodler kind of ratio movement chart, and it shows that short-term hodlers are back in profit now, so basically gaining confidence. The market value is the total value of all Bitcoins in the current market price, and then realized value is the aggregate value at which Bitcoins, based on the price at which they were last transacted. So it shows if people are sort of winning or not winning, and is definitely an indicator. And I love these indicators along with the M2 chart, because these are fundamentals. It's visualizing fundamentals. It's not like technical analysis. So I love these kinds of charts. And this one is definitely turning bullish as well. So that's great to see. Thank you to Vibes Capital Management for this chart.
This is our analyst, Frank. This is Frank who did this chart. So shout out, Frank. Great work.
That's
Is
great.
this the premier first chart put out by Vibes Capital?
Yeah, and they didn't even have to put it out. It's like a volunteer analyst.
Yeah.
Steven, I think you're probably not going to have a chief investment officer. I'm guessing that's going to be a CVO, probably a deputy CVO below that, and a whole host of titles that don't exist elsewhere.
We're really innovating in the org structure direction, right? I think org structure has been pretty static in the hedge fund industry, and we're just here. We're going to disrupt it. You know what I mean? Like, we're here to, just take it to the next level.
This is Steven's meme capital management company, just in case anyone's not clear out there and haven't been following along on Twitter. Let's take a quick look at this one. John, you posted this into the Slack channel, a chart from Lynn Alden saying that with March trade deficit numbers now in, the tariff front running is now fully reported. So April should be a spicy reversal, as that's when tariffs kicked in. Any comments on this one, John?
Yeah, so this feeds into all the macro stuff that we listed off. It feeds into the Fed and Jerome Powell basically saying, hey, we're in wait and see mode. We don't really know how these tariffs are going to affect things. As the chart showed, you can see some like interesting behavior over 1 or 2 months when here it's showing that there was tariff front running. So there was a lot of imports happening before the tariffs, but the tariffs kick in April. So, it'll be, I don't think it's, going to massively move the markets or anything like that, but it is interesting to see how companies behave in these different regions as they're trying to front run the tariffs. So just keep in mind that macro data is going to look probably pretty noisy if you're trying to compare like February and March to April and May. And that's going to be the case for, the next few months here, because there's policies that we're not used to analyzing.
And this was also the thing that messed up the GDP numbers. We had that real big negative Q1 print, but it basically wasn't real because the way they calculate GDP has kind of like an import versus export function. And there were so much imports happening to front run the tariffs that it skewed the numbers. So John's completely right. And it has played into so many so much economic data, made it look worse than it really was.
All right, let's talk about leveraged Bitcoin equities. Our new CIO, Chief Investment Officer at Swan, Ben Workman, really excited to have him. He was on the show last week. Sat on several panels at the MicroStrategy World Conference, Strategy World Conference. And here he is sitting on stage next to Saylor. Awesome stuff. Try to find those clips online if you can. Saylor gave a great talk as well. That is always great to listen to him explain what's going on. He's on the forefront, the pioneer of all of this, the leveraged Bitcoin equities. And we had some great news this week. Last week we had 21 was announced, a new partnership between SoftBank and Cantor Fitzgerald and Tether. Which will apparently have 42,000 Bitcoin on the balance sheet once their SPAC actually completes. We had the announcement of Strive Asset Management, which was founded by presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, and Ben Workman and Punter Jeff, who's also one of the internet's leading experts on leveraged Bitcoin equities of MicroStrategy True North, or I should say MSTR True North. On the board of Strive Asset Management, and David Bailey, who was instrumental in the Trump's election, really, and also in educating and motivating Trump to embrace Bitcoin. Bitcoin Magazine's parent company, BTC Inc., is going to have a SPAC and merger to follow, with initial plans for $300 million of equity and debt earmarked for Bitcoin. This is big news, guys, and this is just really accelerating. Yeah. And
they also did MetaPlanet, so they were the team behind
Correct.
MetaPlanet, which has been fantastically successful. So interesting to see, what's going to come of this.
Was there a statement by Saylor made? Maybe John, I don't know if you heard this. Maybe it was a clip I saw stating he expects like 1,000 of these companies to be operating in the next couple of years.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
it was some big number, but I think it also there's like confusion in what a Bitcoin Treasury company could mean, because I think that the number of companies who are just going to allocate some portion of their reserves to Bitcoin, that's a big number. It's kind of a layup decision for companies to say, I should allocate 5% of my cash to Bitcoin. And I think more and more will come to that. This next level of being truly what we call a leveraged Bitcoin equity. Some call it a Bitcoin Treasury company, which I think leads to the confusion. This is when you're, this is when you're tapping debt and equity capital markets to acquire more Bitcoin at like an incredibly faster pace than you would if you were just using retained earnings from your company. That number, in my opinion, I think it's going to be met, and I could be wrong. People can have their own forecasts. I think that's going to be in like the dozens over the next 1 to 2 years. I think, seeing that get over like 100 or something, that would be kind of surprising to me. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe there'll be a total mania and there'll be more. But I just wanted to make that distinction between the companies who are just allocating some percentage to Bitcoin versus the ones who are actively pursuing this Bitcoin acquisition strategy.
I think that's a key differentiation, because some of these companies are just buying Bitcoin with cash on the balance sheet, and that's great, but it's a different thing. But I think I would take the other side from you on the number of true leveraged Bitcoin equities we see. I think it could get pretty high. I'm not saying 1,000 But over 100, I could see. I'm already aware of dozens of these that are trying to spin up, and I think we're still relatively early. I think you do see a mania, is effectively what I'm saying. I'm actually betting there will be a mania, and it will get too hot.
Yeah, it'll overbuild for the demand that's there. At some point, I mean, there's clearly more demand than just MicroStrategy out there for these, leverage products, especially the fixed income products. And we're seeing with Strike and Strife, which are the relatively new products that Strategy has put out, lots of interest in options by traders, and they love the volatility, etc. Also, I love the idea of having a dividend from these assets, and they, are pretty big, pretty high. I think it's a 7%, eternal dividend, right? He's like, it's infinite. It'll last 1,000 years. So that's fascinating. Just really interesting to see what they've done. And I've got a clip here actually that John also posted into the Slack channel, was about Saylor talking about how he used AI for financial engineering, right? And AI is just we're all realizing how big of a deal it's going to be. We all maybe thought that it was going to be a big deal, but it's happening now in real time. And if you aren't using it, basically in every single industry, you're going to be left behind. This is really interesting, and I think shows just how important AI is. So I thought we'd take a little pause here and talk about AI from one of our chief Bitcoiners.
And then not a long time ago came along deep research, and that was a big aha moment, because first I used an order of magnitude more computing power, and then I used 2 orders of magnitude more computing power. And then I started asking questions via deep research. Well, how would you design this security, or is this possible? I have a question which would require 5 lawyers and 3 financiers to answer, and it would take them 2 weeks to answer. And I would put this chat in deep research mode, and I would grind it, and it would grind through 50 sources and work for 15 minutes and come back. And it doesn't necessarily give me the answer that I can immediately act on, but it gives me somewhere between 80 and 95% of what I need. And then I take that to the finance department. I take that to the legal department. So a lot of our innovative capital markets activity, things like Strife, things like Strike, we had to fight through all sorts of complicated legal issues, complicated financial issues. We did a convertible preferred stock. It had never been done before. We listed it on NASDAQ. It had never been done before. We attached a shelf registration to it. It had never been done before. We made it a perpetual dividend, good for 1,000 years. It had never been done before. We created a perpetual call option. It had never been done before. We put a shelf registration on it. Never been done before. Now, when you go to 25 professionals with 30 years experience, say, I want to do 20 things that have never been done before, and I want to do them in a hurry. I need an answer in the next 48 hours. Right? That creates a very stressful situation. And what I found with AI is the AI doesn't have a lot of ego. I can ask it a question. I can tell it that's not right. I can tell it that's stupid. I can disagree. I can work through my issues. And then after I've gone through 20 iterations, which would have ground human beings into a pulp, I can then take the 95% answer to the finance team and the legal team and the bankers and the market and say, I think this is plausible.
You can see it in he's talking with his CEO, and you can just see the shit his CEO has been through with this. Like, he knows this is happening, and he's like, "Yes, Michael. Yes, you keep coming to us with this."
I need 20 novel financial instruments in the next 48 hours. Let's go.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, cool for a lot of different reasons. Just that, it's a novel financial instrument. It wasn't just him looking at a notepad and coming up with it, or it wasn't even just a group of people. They used these AI LLM tools. And I thought it was cool how he said, humans have an ego, and if you like ask them all these questions or criticize their ideas, that they might get, what did he say, beaten into a pulp or something.
Yep.
Whereas the AI, you can just kind of be pretty blunt with it. But also I thought it was cool that he's like, it doesn't give you the totally finished product. Like I think he said 80-90% of the way there, you still have to have that human review and critical input from other people to get it like really across the finish line. Yeah. So yeah, I thought that was just cool for a lot of different reasons.
You know what we call that, right? We call that cope plus skill issue. That is. That's cope. They're coping.
It's true. Well, we've got some state level news.
Brady, can I just before we pivot away from the conference, of course. I just wanted to make a like kind of general comment. So I was at this conference, MicroStrategy World, in 2023, so 2 years ago. But if you rewind to back then, it was only a few months removed from November of 2022, which was Bitcoin at 16K, FTX, all the crazy things that happened in 2022. And it was largely in 2023 still a business intelligence conference, which is MSTR's legacy business. We had a booth at Swan at the conference, as did a bunch of other Bitcoin companies, and people came by. It wasn't like it was a total ghost town or anything, but you could tell like they were really new to Bitcoin. They were not like that interested, and they were largely there for the BI stuff, business intelligence. 2 years from now, like later now, just completely different. Bitcoin's at 100K. The ETFs are now a thing. MicroStrategy's the best performing stock in the world on like every metric. The market cap of 100 billion or whatever it is, and it's like it's a Bitcoin conference. And I was just floored at how different things could get in just 2 years' time. So I just wanted to give that context, and it just makes you think, 2 years from now, what might be going on.
Oh, it's unreal the speed that it has progressed. It's uncomparable to where it was a few years ago, for sure. I'd also highlight Strive Asset, ASST. So we had 21, we had ASST launch. I mean, you are seeing big entrants to this space. There's also this company, Jet King, out of India that I'm unfamiliar with, but they say they want to raise a few billion to buy Bitcoin. Apparently, they're legit from what I've heard, but no endorsement. The thing listeners need to understand is that you've got, like, let's take all these people at face value. You got at least 10, 15, 20 billion dollars here. They want to hit. None of that has bought. None of that has purchased. That has not been executed. And so the actual impact, and I even think the reflexive perception flywheel, has not actually started yet. We're still like, we've got the announcements. The announcements are bullish, but we haven't actually had the capital deployed. And also the market hasn't yet realized that, oh shit, this is real. That pump, that appreciation is still in front of us. Has not happened yet.
That, along with the potential of the U.S. government buying.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean,
I just remember this. I actually had a thread I'll share real quick. This is from way back in November 2020. This was just 7 months after Swan launched. And I said, I came with this term. I combined two sort of diametrically opposed memes, HODL and FOMO, and said HODL FOMO equals escape velocity. The 2017 run was driven by short-term retail and trader speculation. It was a fear of missing out on fiat gains. This run, and again, I was a cycle early, right? But this run will be dominated by fear of missing out on adoption of Bitcoin as a reserve asset by individuals, corporations, and even nations. And the thread goes on and kind of lay out the details, but the idea is basically coming to fruition at this point. And what are the consequences? I mean, you're basically setting a floor, right? Because Bitcoin is now being appreciated as a reserve asset, as a way to prevent fiat loss, right? So instead of people buying Bitcoin with the idea of making dollars, they're buying Bitcoin with the idea of not losing value because they're holding dollars. So they're actually buying it to prevent fiat loss instead of to get fiat gains, right? And completely different, obviously, mindset about Bitcoin and what it is. And because there are so many more people accumulating Bitcoin and holding it for the long term, they're planning to hold it for the long term. They're not there to try to sell the top. That's going to have a massive impact on how price moves. And the big blow off tops that we've seen in the first few cycles, which were driven a lot by people trying to find or to gain fiat. That's what they were in it for. That's why crypto was so, so hot. That's exactly what people were trying to do. Now people are buying Bitcoin to save it, and that raises the floor, right? It just constantly raises the floor because there's a lot less Bitcoin on the table able to be bought. So the price goes up until, there's to find that spot where there is, basically willingness to sell your Bitcoin, right? And if people are buying 500,000 Bitcoin like Strategy has, or 42,000 Bitcoin like 21 plans to buy, or $3 billion worth of this Indian company that Steven just mentioned, it's just going to drive the price up and keep that floor there. So you won't see these massive like 70, 80% drops. You might see some volatility that leads to 20, 30% drop like we've seen this year. But you're not going to see 70, 80% because people are holding the floor. And those cycles, the way they behaved in the past, I think are now gone because of the broad understanding of Bitcoin as a reserve asset.
Totally. And something to complement that, I actually had a conversation with one of my clients that, people are always saying, it's difficult to orange pill people. I'm the only one in my friend group or my family. And, what I explained to him is in order to understand Bitcoin, you have to understand the problem. You have to start seeing the cracks in the existing system. And most, wealthy people, wealthy companies, anyone that has done well in the existing system have, generally ignored it because they haven't needed to pay attention to Bitcoin. So these new adopters, we're seeing they're starting to see those cracks, right? And corporations are now starting to see, oh, shoot, this entire system can be changed by different legislation, whether it be tariffs, they're going to print more money, and they're starting to see and experience the difficulties that, the early Bitcoiners have been talking about, shouting from the rooftops, and been mostly ignored about. So that I mean, that's what drives this Bitcoin adoption is when people start seeing these cracks, they want to exit and move to something that can't be manipulated as the existing system is. So just keep watching that. More and more participants are going to see those cracks, and they'll start adopting Bitcoin slowly but surely.
The correct understanding of Bitcoin is spreading, right?
Yeah.
Let's say, unless you guys, just John or Steven, anything to wrap up the corporate nation reserve treasury leverage Bitcoin equities. Okay, let's take a look at, we have several pieces of state news from this past week. First of all, Missouri with a pretty strong majority here, 102 to 41 vote, scrapping state capital gains tax. So on stocks, real estate, and yes, even Bitcoin. So this is fascinating. This is not the Bitcoin Treasury Reserve or the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve idea. This kind of came out of the blue for me, guys. I didn't even know this was being considered. It was not on my radar. But this is fascinating. This to me is just as bullish as a strategic Bitcoin reserve might be for any particular state. Yeah, go ahead.
I got to pour a little cold water on this. In particular, our social media guy, Missouri, the first U.S. state where selling sats would have 0% state tax, except for every 0% tax state out there, like Florida and Texas, and you know what I mean. Like they're having a state level. Like there are many states that have a 0% income tax, and so you don't pay on anything. And so this just adds Missouri, which is great. Like I mean, that's awesome.
This is capital gains tax, though. Is that an income tax? Yeah, at the state level, not federal level, right?
Yeah, so I pay zero capital gains tax at the state level.
At the state level, okay, gotcha.
So does Texas. So does I think Utah. Like just
New Hampshire is another one, I think.
Yeah. So it's great that they're joining that, but it's like there's some states where that's true already.
Fair, that makes sense. New Hampshire. That is the same. Well, New Hampshire, New Hampshire did pass a strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Yes.
And this is, I believe, the actual first state level strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Yeah. It's finally happened. We got one. It'll be really interesting to see what they do with it, but it's a good job on them passing it for sure.
Yeah, I believe this one specifically caps their holdings at 5% of total state funds. So that's legit. It's going to be small, but step in the right direction.
And I would put this in the category of this is like a theme forming here, if you guys can tell. We're like in the announcement phase of people basically saying we're laying the groundwork that we can make purchases. Obviously, the Bitcoin corporate LBEs, those are the most serious, right? Like they're actively speeding ahead to buy Bitcoin as soon as they can. The nation states and the US states, it's a little more tricky and debatable when those purchases might actually happen. But if Bitcoin's at 100K, only when these announcements have happened. I know Steven agrees with this. It's not priced in. Like some people might make the argument that it's like a buy the rumor, sell the news thing, that the price is reflecting that they're going to make the purchases. Then they make the purchases and the price sells off. I do not think that's the case here. I think you see another big move up when these entities actually come in and the headline hits, hey, remember 3 months ago when this entity paved the way to buy Bitcoin? Well, now they're actually buying Bitcoin. Right. I think you move significantly higher on those announcements.
And that's what's notable about this New Hampshire bill is that it does have a provision that allows the state to accumulate Bitcoin up to 5% of its reserve. And it's only Bitcoin right now. They put a limit on it. They said it has to an asset that has to be a $500 billion market cap or market value, basically. And Bitcoin's over 2 trillion now, and it's the only one that qualifies. So they left themselves open to maybe accumulating other digital assets if they got big enough, but they clearly understood that Bitcoin would be the only one that qualified at the time of the signing.
Yeah. I think it was good, and 5% is super material, I would love to see every state with a 5% Bitcoin treasury. That'd be fucking amazing.
It's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Arizona also signed an SBR. This one is a little different.
Yes.
Right. It sets up a digital assets reserve fund. It's managed by the state treasurer. They can hold things like staking rewards, airdrops, and interest from digital assets. So it's up to 10% of non-Bitcoin assets in the fund can be moved to the state's general fund. This has no provision for buying more Bitcoin. It's more like the state of the strategic Bitcoin reserve at the federal level right now, which is just a legal framework to kind of deal with holding these assets. What are you going to do with them? Makes it a little bit more clear. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Definitely not on the level of New Hampshire.
Yeah, it's literally like it has to do with asset forfeiture. So it's like someone dies and they don't have family members to claim it. So now the state can take those assets and then like make money from them, which is like, and there's procedures to make sure people don't lose assets they should have been able to claim. Like it's not all evil or anything, but like it's very much like a accounting legalese, like what to do with people who die. It's not a like we want to buy Bitcoin. In fact, the governor vetoed the bill that said we want to buy Bitcoin. Like that's the important thing. They both House and Senate passed it. The governor vetoed it, and then they passed this very lame bill.
Yeah, watered down version. Very watered down version. All right. So let's see what else, guys. I've got a couple of fun things. We can wrap things up if you want. I can do some quick hits. Actually, let's take a look at this one. This was important, in my opinion, and it's not a new thing, and it's not unique, but it's very interesting. So Spain now says that if you wish to withdraw more than 3,000 euros in cash, you must notify the tax agency at least 24 hours in advance of the withdrawal. You must also specify the purpose of the withdrawal. Failure to comply with this requirement may result in fines up to 150,000 euros. This is some pretty insane capital controls here.
That's wild.
But yeah, not surprising to your average Bitcoiner, who's well aware of the money in the bank is not really your money and they give you access to it. But man, to the average person, you would hope that that's going to be a wake up call. Hey bank, can I please have $3,001 if I give you enough notice?
Yeah. And you
Really?
want to go. I'm using it to go on vacation. I'm using it to buy a new shed for my backyard. Like, I mean, why do they need to know that? It's control. It's control.
It's
Control
also
for
a
money.
really important reminder with all these different Bitcoin instruments, the companies the treasury companies you can go buy through your brokerage account. It's super important to have real Bitcoin in self-custody, right? If you want true control where you're not going to deal with things like that, you sell your MSTR and then in order to pull cash, you have to notify the tax agency. You have to have real Bitcoin in cold storage.
Yeah, and you can do that through Swan collaboratively with Swan Vault. It's a multi-signature vault, so you have to have 2 of 3 keys to move your funds. So you're in complete control. Swan holds 1 key for your convenience. If you want to send transactions, security-wise, you don't really want to have your 2 hardware wallets in the same location. And Swan is there to help you recover funds if one of your keys gets compromised or damaged or whatever. So I love that approach for like the vast majority of people who are holding Bitcoin. I think it's super safe, but you don't have to go it alone, right?
No.
Stake and Shake. There is a Bitcoiner high up at Stake and Shake, guys. They have, look at this
Their
logo
first
here.
move was Tallow.
Yeah.
Bitcoiner, they first
logo.
did
It's like
Tallow. They got that done. That was most important. Now they're on to Bitcoin.
Yeah, this logo here has Bitcoin, beef tallow fries, Bitcoin, beef tallow fries. And they signed this tweet, Steak Toshi, right? There's a serious Bitcoiner up there, Steak and Shake. I hope they reveal themselves on Twitter at some point, because let's go. So starting on May 16th, just 7 days, you'll be able to spend Bitcoin at Steak and Shake to buy some beef tallow fries. This is good stuff.
And hey, I think both. It's kind of online. It's framed as like an either or. It's like you hold your Bitcoin forever, or your medium of exchange payments maxi. I think you can thread that needle pretty easily. It's like you can buy a burger from Steak and Shake, signal to them, I like the fact that you guys accept Bitcoin and you pay $20 for your meal, whatever. That doesn't, you're not losing your Bitcoin by doing that. Spend and replace. You're not going to do it every day. But you just signal to the merchant, hey, I think this is cool that you do this. And IRS, if they're listening, I don't think the IRS even cares that you buy a $20 burger and you have a $3.12 capital gain on that transaction. Like they don't care. It's not big enough to matter.
Yeah. I'm gonna do it, like you said, just to signal that there are Bitcoiners out there that appreciate what you guys are doing.
Hold up.
Yep.
I'm trying to figure something out real quick. They've got a stock. Hold on.
We like the stunk.
Hold on, guys. We gotta. Where is this? Okay. We need to get them to do this. The treasury strategy. What is Steak and Shake stock ticker? This is important.
Yeah. I mean, we could make this a thing on Twitter, like Creatine and Vibes Capital.
Okay, it's BH. The stock ticker is BH. It's a holding company, Big Laurie Holding. They own several businesses, including Steak Shake. They were originally SNS, then the reorganization happened. So, okay, we need to get in touch with Big Laurie Holdings, BH, on the New York Stock Exchange, and they've got to do a treasury strategy.
It's the obvious next step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anybody that knows people that work at Big Laurie Holdings, you should reach out. Email me at steven@swanbitcoin.com. Put us in touch with anyone in the management team there, and we should get Steak and Shake to have a Bitcoin treasury.
Let's get it done.
At least hold the Bitcoin they're taking for payment at minimum.
Yeah. We'll get Ben Workman. Ben Workman's at Swan now. We'll talk to their management team.
That's right. We got the guy.
We got the guy, dude.
We got the guy. I got a fun one to wrap up with. This is on Twitter. I just loved it. And
which one's the best crypto asset? Well, Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Okay. What's the second best? There is no second best. There's no second best crypto asset. There's a crypto asset. It's called Bitcoin, right? Right. There's no second best. Okay. It's not like Google and Facebook. It's not like Apple and Amazon. Yeah, we can debate Apple or Amazon. What's better? They both look like tech monopolies to me. They both look pretty good. On the other end, Bitcoin or no, Bitcoin.
I mean, we've leveled up memes with AI.
good.
I still like the old school memes. Keep them coming. But man, that's fun. All right. Any closing remarks, guys?
This announcement came while we were on. JD Vance is going to be speaking at the Vegas conference. So just FYI,
Nice.
kind of a continuation of the big name political person. Obviously, Trump was last year in Nashville, and looks like JD Vance is going to be there this year.
You've got the framing wrong. I am going to be giving a talk on sunlight alongside the vice president at the conference. This is the right way to land this point. I always knew one day if I just started posting about sunlight on Twitter that eventually I'd be at the same conference as the vice president of the United States. I mean,
you can just do things.
You can just do things.
You can just do things.
You've got Steven, JD Vance, Peter Schiff.
And now we're talking about the degrees of connection as well here. Like we're wondering how close John is to the Pope, and then I'm gonna be like one hop from JD Vance. So like we're making inroads to the world.
All right,
Brady, you had Steven's exact session title. I think now's the time to share that.
I was just thinking that. I'm not sure where it went, but
Okay.
it's like the intersection of health and sunlight or something like that. And Bitcoin health and sunlight. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, it's here. Bitcoin's intersection of health, wealth, and sunlight. And this is going to be with myself, Andy from the CEO of Crowd Health, which I think a lot of you guys know and love, Paul Keating at Primal, who I believe worked with Paul Saladino for a while. John would probably know that. And then my friend Freddie, who is he's at Bitcoin Policy UK. He's the founder over there. And he's going to be moderating the panel.
Nice. Yeah. I think all four of us will be in Vegas, right? Yeah. So come find us. We'd love to meet you all. Our ride or dies in the chat. I hope you come find us. All right. Let's sign off here.
In an appropriate way. It's not a come find us. Like it is it is an appropriate. We'd love to say hi. I'm kidding.
Come find us. Yes, exactly. Thank you so much to Mara for supporting the show. They are one of the biggest publicly traded mining networks in the country. They're securing the most secure computer network in the world, the Bitcoin network. Thanks also to BTC Prague. It's coming up June 19th through the 21st. It's the best, in my opinion, and from what I've heard, I haven't been yet. I need to go. But the consensus is the best Bitcoin conference in Europe. Those guys do a great job. We are actually working with the guys from BTC Prague to put together BTC in DC, which I'm super excited about. I think this is going to be a really important event. September 30th to October 1st at the Kennedy Center in Washington, DC. This event is designed to bridge the worlds of Bitcoin innovation and public policy. Perfect timing to bring a big Bitcoin conference to Washington, DC. Excited about that. And finally, check out Swan Private. All three of these guys work on Swan Private. We are your partner for generational wealth. We build strong relationships with our clients. We provide white glove concierge service for all kinds of services here. We've got OTC service, institutional level liquidity, retirement accounts. We can talk to you about Bitcoin Treasury and help you get that set up, tax loss harvesting, inheritance and estate planning, etc. We also provide great security services with Swan Guard, which protects your assets so you can focus on growing wealth. And we have a couple of custody solutions, Swan Safe and Swan Vault. You can check those out. We also produce insights from Bitcoin's brightest minds, great content to keep you educated and up to date about Bitcoin and the broader financial world. And finally, we throw a lot of fun exclusive events. We do happy hours all over the country. We've been having a lot of fun meeting our clients and Bitcoiners and people interested in Bitcoin at these events. It's always a Swan, maybe several there, so you can come and meet us at one of these events. You got to join Swan Private to be able to get those invites. So check out Swan Private. We appreciate you all being here. We're here every Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And of course, you can watch the recording on YouTube. We have a podcast, audio podcast as well, if that's your jam, at swansignalpodcast.com. So thanks again for being here. We'll see you next Friday.
See you guys.